decade with our friends at Pfizer, growing and developing huge teams. You know her as maybe she entered your LinkedIn like she did mine in the year of our Lord when she started working with the National Entrepreneur Center as their DEI officer. You know her now as one of the biggest movers and shakers in the Nashville scene, amongst many, many others. Founder of Career Thrivers, where they focus on DEI, strategic planning, coaching, events. Obviously, she's one of LinkedIn's top voices with over 9,000 followers. And then I went ahead and clicked on the other icon to see how many followers you had on the other channels. And I'll be damned if she doesn't have about 9,000 on Instagram as well. You know her as the host of Let's Thrive Together podcast and growing almost 4,000 subscribers, subscribing to that newsletter on LinkedIn, Brittany N. Cole. Brittany, how are you?
Cole, I am fantastic. Thank you so much for the invitation to join you. And I was reading those stats like, oh, okay, I think I'm doing pretty
You're like,
good.
okay, let Cole read more of my intro. Okay, keep
Who
reading.
is that? Okay, all right,
I'm
we're
Look,
moving.
anytime you can see someone's post and you look behind them and they've got all the books, you're like, oh, you immediately start putting inferences together, right? Like a very well learned person, she reads books all the time. But then you take it to a whole different level, Brittany Cole, when you take them and you organize them by color. So we'll take that for another episode, but
Yeah,
it's an
well,
awing background for sure.
thank you. It was a little pandemic project that I thought would take a day. It took a week, but now I have memorized all of the colored binders in our collection. So it's
Oh,
all
that is so funny. So, thank you so much for being our first guest here on Cole Evans podcast. Again, thank you very much. We want to educate our audience, Brittany, on whether you're just getting started, you're right out of school, maybe you're not even finished with school yet, or maybe you're a little longer in the tooth, as they like to say, and you're at a company you've been at for a long time. Maybe you're thinking about transitioning. Maybe you're about to be an empty nester and you want to start making money online. Everyone in between. There's no magic person, right? It's wherever you are in your life right now. I want us to have a conversation about this thing we call marketing, this thing we call storytelling, and how some of it can be a waste of time and energy, and how some can really pay dividends for businesses. And so let's just dive right into it. Let's talk about you put out a what some would call a ridiculous amount of content. It's a
Mm,
lot of content, but the good thing is, what I find, and we'll pick on LinkedIn for a little bit. Okay, um, here's what I know is I think today's LinkedIn channel is a lot like the old media channels. People that were early on, and you claimed and you staked really solid equity on those channels. And then more people come on and they get a little bit noisier. And so the brands that were always there always have a little bit of brand equity in our brains, if you will. But you have to come on as a new person in this example I'm setting. You have to come on the scene, if you will, really strong to even be noticed, much less to stand out, much less to become a top voice. Tell our audience a little bit about one of the big questions I wrote on here is if we kind of go back 8 years, okay? And that's if I'm doing rough math. This is you're getting out of Pfizer, you're kind of changing a chapter, right? Tell us a little bit about what you're following and what your mentality was around content then as compared to the engine that is today.
Yeah, that is such a great question. And I might fine tune the number just a little bit. So, 8 years ago, I probably was not thinking about content on social
Sure.
media at all. I was working inside Pfizer and had started a side hustle. I was actually doing image consulting. Like a lot of people don't know that part of my story, but Career Thrivers was first Style by Brit. So I was working with women, helping them elevate their look so that they could elevate in their leadership and whatever they wanted to do as an entrepreneur or corporate leader. And I've always loved fashion. I loved that work. It was a blast, but I was just doing it with the women that I was working with. So there wasn't like, I wasn't a big blogger, like none of that was happening. Well, 2019 rolled around, and long story short, made the decision to take the leap and to leave an almost 12-year career in sales and marketing. And I just knew that, like, I'm in an N of one. I've had this marketing machine behind me in the brand equity that is Pfizer. Of course, everyone knows that company name now. I used to have to say when people ask you that inevitable question of what do you do, I'd say, I work for Pfizer, insert title or whatever role at the time. And I'd see their eyes kind of glaze over. And then I'd say, the company that makes Viagra. And everyone's like, oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, now, of course, everyone knows Pfizer because of the vaccine. But I actually was a marketer at Pfizer. So, and I led digital marketing, was responsible for about a $25 million budget. And it was in that role, my most favorite of my career there, that I really learned business because I have a core belief that marketing is the core of business. And so if you really want to build your business acumen, go be a marketer for a year or two. And I'll often say
Right.
that marketing is like dog years because you don't have to spend a lot of time there to learn a lot because everything moves so fast. So when I left Pfizer, I knew if I'm going to not just rebrand this business, but if this business is going to replace my six-figure corporate salary and benefits and all the things, then I got to be out here on social media. And I picked LinkedIn as my first platform and just started recording video. Understood the power of video. I used to have a series called the Millennial Minute because originally I focused a lot on generational diversity, and it's just kind of grown from there.
That is so cool, and I love a good alliteration all day long. Let's talk about allocation of time. Okay, so I think aside from business owners I speak with, but I think if we paint a broad brush, people are like, "There's no way I can, do the things that I see in my feed. It's there's no way I don't have enough time, right?" Let's talk about time allocation and how you block out the time, create the time, prioritize the time. Tell us a little bit about how it works for you.
Yeah. So what's going through my mind right now is a saying from a mentor of mine, Marshawn Evans Daniels. She often says that every struggle is the sign of a missing system. So when I think about my journey with content, a lot of my struggle used to be about time. Well, I don't have the time. I don't feel inspired today or this week, so I don't post anything. And then next week I'm fired up because of whatever, and I'm posting every day. So there's inconsistency there in what to expect from me. So last year we made a pretty big investment at Career Thrivers to partner with a podcast production team and batched 21 episodes of a show in 2.5 days. And so
Wow.
a lot of the content that people see on my feed, it's stuff that we recorded last September, October. I think September is when we recorded that
You did 21 episodes in 2 days?
2.5 days. Yep.
Like
Yep.
change clothes, the whole thing?
The whole thing
Oh,
had an
that's
audience. Like we pulled an event around it to make it feel like a talk show. And it was a lot of fun. I had a blast doing it. It was wild. It was
I
wild,
bet
but
looking
it's
back,
a
you're very
podcast.
happy that you batched it, huh?
Oh, so happy. And the team at Epic Network, formerly Insta Podcast, Jessica is the founder of that company. They're incredible. So literally, right, to just give you a little insider insight in terms of what that process, what that system looks like. Every Monday, that team sends us an email of the content for the week based on that episode. And so there are YouTube shorts in there are reels in there are guest reels in there that can go to the guests. There's a YouTube, the actual episode is in there. So that system has made my consistency, not only as a founder, as a content creator, thought leader, keynote speaker, it's made it so much more seamless because we
Sure.
put in investment to build a system that has been working and that we plan to continue. And we mapped it out. So two of those sessions per year. This sounds wild to even say, but doing that twice a year gets us a year's worth of content.
So tell me, I mean, that's crazy, and I say crazy because I don't. My behavioral style, it's not as efficient as that. But when I had the opportunity to work with Dr. Jeff at an optometry clinic here, one of the top gross revenue producing optometry companies in the country, I then found out. But he was very big on. He wanted to start a podcast. We had a little fishbowl corner that when you turn to go check out, so every patient in there, we're talking thousands a month, would cross over, and he wanted them to see that he was putting on a podcast and doing this thing. And at the time, he said, "Look, we're just going to batch it, and we're going to do a couple of hours, one day a month, and we're just going to do them back to back." And obviously, I mean, I get it. Your physician, you got your efficiency down. I get it. But as a marketer, I was like, oh my God, like 2 hours sitting in a room to record. I love a good podcast, obviously, but 2 hours, like, come on. So that being said, it is extremely efficient, but I'll even go back and maybe do a close up of my eyes when you said 21 in 2 days. I mean, that's a lot. That is a lot. But to your point, you put in a little bit of energy for a couple of days and haven't thought about it for a couple of months. That's awesome.
Yeah, and of course, you still get those spurts of energy or like around a certain topic or like things that pop up in the news. So I still pop in and record video and
Oh
do
yeah,
things
sure.
video today, but I don't have that weight of like, have we posted something? Do we have content? Because I know for sure that weekly content, is there and it's done, and then anything else is additional.
That's awesome. So tell me, preferred channel. So, and when I say preferred channel, it's kind of a double question, right? So I really want to know the output. So video, written word, video. I think you've already said video, audio. And then what channel do you find that layering that on is kind of your secret sauce?
Yeah. So I'm a firm believer in knowing your strengths and sticking in with them and in them. So
Right.
my divine deposit is teaching and speaking. I love it. That's the thing I would do for free, et cetera, all the things. So for me, video makes a lot of sense. So uh, again, kind of going back to this podcast example, the long form of a video podcast conversation, et cetera, then lends itself well to be able to chop up and create shorter form to say, hey, there's something that I wanted to add that maybe I didn't say in the episode. Let's write a blog about it, or a newsletter article. So video newsletters are probably my top two favorites. I could be better about consistently sharing via email, but it's like, hey, follow along on our social channels. That stuff is always updated. And then as far as actual social media channels, hands down, LinkedIn is my favorite platform
Why
for
is
many,
that?
for many reasons. Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I think that you get more bang for your buck, right? The return on investment is better. The algorithm is such that your content lasts longer and goes farther on Instagram. Also, just because of the nature of my business, I have a B2B company. My buyer is more than likely on LinkedIn. And so, as an entrepreneur, it just makes sense for me to focus on that channel. So it's my favorite one to connect. I've closed a lot of deals through LinkedIn. So it's like, hey, it's
Sure.
this here. If I've got to pick a place to hang out, it's there. And then I love
So
Instagram would be my second.
So I have to interrupt Brittany and ask. So you brought up closing business. Let's talk a little bit about what I have here is the leverage of content. So I think few and far between times do we get as marketers the credit for, I'll make fun of my on-air sign that we joked about. But if someone contacted me and said, "Hey, saw your podcast. I saw your on-air sign," something that alluded to the thing that brought them in. Tell our
Mhm.
audience a little bit about what feedback you get aside from getting feedback on the channel. That's where you're cultivating business. But tell our audience a little bit about when your prospects or new communications are referencing content that you put out.
I'm so glad that you asked this question because it happens often, and it always throws me off a little bit because people will make comments like, "Oh, I see you everywhere. I love your LinkedIn videos," and I'm like, "I don't know that I've ever seen you engage." I'm like, I don't even know
Yeah.
that you saw my stuff, right? But
Right.
they see it and
Right.
they watch it, and so that has been interesting to me, especially because all of our work right now from a marketing standpoint has been organic. Like we haven't even really, in my mind, like poured fuel on the fire with advertising. So we don't
Right.
run any ads. Like I'm not intentionally ensuring that you see me all the time. So that's why I say like you get more bang on your book over there because when I record a video and post it over there, like sometimes it'll be 2 weeks after the content has been posted.
Hmm.
I'll see people that are commenting on it. So being able to like walk into a discovery meeting at a Fortune 500 company and you're sitting down with an executive and they're like, I really love your LinkedIn videos. I always have to kind of gather myself internally, like, oh, it's just that reminder, like,
Right.
you're
Oh, you
watching
didn't
your
like it?
isn't that why you post?
You didn't give me an insightful or a
Oh,
heart?
it throws me, right? It always kind of throws me just a little bit. I'm like, oh, okay, great,
Right.
But yeah, that definitely happens.
So that's awesome. Let's talk about engage. So you've got organic kind of drop in when Brittany has time or something's happening in the moment that's trending or getting your attention. You're jumping in and posting. You've got some things kind of on schedule that you batched in that are real pieces of you, which I think are extremely important. So many businesses I found in my experience, even if they're selling their own self, if they're selling a service that really they're the brand of, or if they're selling a widget. I mean, honestly, and everyone in between, they get so focused. I have this conversation many times a week. They get so focused on the sale that, we used to call it commission breath. You show up and it's like you're so trying to sell something, like, shut up. No one wants to hear what you're trying to sell. So tell me a little bit about engaging and your time, right? So, not to put you on the spot, and if you don't want to answer this, that's cool. Some people have a core go-to person that they know. Anything over this line, text me and I'm going to jump in there to comment on. But you get my brand voice. You know what we're really trying to do here and point people here and there. Some people have that person, and I love that and I respect that, and I think it's great. Not saying whether you do or don't. Tell me about time allocation for engaging with other people's channels that have nothing to do with Brittany and her community, and those that are in it.
Yeah, so I'll say, Cole, I don't have that person yet. So when I'm commenting, it is actually me, but so I think a little bit of this has to do with the type of business that I own. So I own a learning and development company, right? So a lot of it is based on frameworks around thinking, working, productivity, focus, inclusion, and retention of talent. And because of that, it's important for me as the founder to be on top of those industries, workforce development, leadership development. So I allocate as part of, in my mind, the work to make me a better leader and a better business owner in the space, time to engage with people's content that I admire in that area, right? So Dr. Janice Kasama is someone that comes to mind for me who has a huge following on LinkedIn. She's also a friend of mine. She's been on the podcast. When I see her content, when I'm scrolling my feed, I stop and I read it and I engage. I'm learning something, right? So for me, it's a part of my own growth and development as an entrepreneur. Time wise, I don't necessarily, I wouldn't say that I have it down to a science, but I probably, and different seasons of business are different, but I would probably say I probably spend at least probably 30 minutes a day engaging in other people's content.
Okay.
Probably primarily on LinkedIn, a little bit on Instagram. I think Instagram, and I don't know, I'd be curious about your thoughts on this. I feel like Instagram, you can get stuck in the scroll, like literally just scrolling and you look up and 40 minutes have gone by. I don't know, for some reason, and I don't know if it's just LinkedIn, I feel more like I am scrolling more productively on LinkedIn. So I'm like learning something, but then I find myself not being on as long, right? So it's like the whole, post don't scroll for your own efficiency, but it's like I'm learning something over here. It's
Yeah,
making
no,
sense. So
100%,
I'm gonna
100%.
engage and then I'm gonna get off.
So I think, I'm thinking a couple of things. Number one, I'm thinking, do I actually learn anything if I watch HGTV, or am I actually going to go, wrestle an alligator if I watch National Geographic? But I,
Yeah.
I do think that creating the message for the channel is a very, very a smart alignment, right? I think where there is a miss, I've been 100% responsible of this myself, which is being more anxious about getting something out or getting a series of things out that the channel was really not even a thought or secondary to a thought of posting it or scheduling it and feeling good about myself. I think you're exactly right. Where I think the infinite scroll is becoming more apparent on all channels. I'll give you context what I'm saying.
Mhm.
In one of my feeds this morning, there's a guy's over a million, 1.3, 1.4 million followers on LinkedIn. And his post this morning said, whenever it was on my feed, and said, basically, I'm never going to get on TikTok. I don't aspire to sell a book. I don't do this. I don't do this. And it went on, and it had a pretty big feedback. And so I'm kind of a proponent of Gary Vee's mentality on this because I agree with it, which is the channel will change. The thing will change. TikTok will not. My kids will probably never be on TikTok, right? It'll be another thing. Um, that being said, being on those channels to further get your story out there, the post that is on LinkedIn will never work on Instagram or TikTok, and vice versa, because that go to Comedy Central and turn it on, and then show me a Dove commercial. It's probably a little bit of a miss for that audience. Whereas I go to a Hallmark or a Lifetime or something that's a little bit more calming and programming, more aligned with the Dove programming of their brand and their commercial. That's alignment. That's symbiotic. Going on and trying to sell tires on Hallmark by saying promo this Saturday. That's a miss. And so I think my take on it, Brittany, is that getting things scheduled on channels where that one non-millennial pause as we started the beginning of the episode, but where you can feed that attention as quick as you can. A LinkedIn, again, we're painting a broad brush. A LinkedIn user wants to scroll a little bit long. More than likely, and I don't think this is, no, it is. It's still by majority. I'll say that as a non subject matter expert. The majority of LinkedIn users are still sitting at a job they more than likely can't leave because they're buttoned into a chair attached to a 401k they're never going to leave. 10, 20,000 of those people are retiring every day. And so I think you see that channel really opening up over the very few years to come because it's going to be getting younger. Right. So I took the design example I told you for our podcast. I put 4 or 5 designs together, 5 designs. I'm sorry, 4 designs, and I put them out across every one of my channels, hands down. I got feedback on all the channels. Facebook, overwhelmingly the most feedback. Now you would think, oh, well, professional. Why, when you get it on LinkedIn, that's not a place where LinkedIn is still a place where, unless it's an inspirational, the good of everyone, or some stance that we all internally believe together, you still have this element of, I can't let other people around me see I'm engaging in that kind of content. And that's what I think happens in a professional world. You might believe absolutely what Brittany and Cole is saying, but because of all the things in your small bubble of your world, you might not be able to even hit the like button. Whereas, I might see you at a party and go, hey, I'm not engaging in your content, but I love your videos. And you're
Yep.
like, wait, where's this person from? What's going on? All right, you have been awesome. I did a lot of talking, but
No,
uh,
no, I think you're right, Cole. The only thing that I would add to that is I've had to adjust my perspective and approach to the fact that there are people on either platform. So like for me, Instagram versus LinkedIn. I used to take a lot of time and attention to your point, fit the content for the audience. So I may post the same visual or the same video on Instagram and then completely change the caption to sound more professional on LinkedIn, right?
sure.
Some on LinkedIn. And one of the things that I've noticed is that, and I think that phenomena that you were talking about the audience getting younger, I think it's already happening. And I don't know if I would attribute it to generation or just the fact that like people are just craving authenticity in every space, especially in the workplace.
Yeah,
The stuff I post on Instagram, sometimes I will copy and paste the exact same caption and everything right over on LinkedIn, and it does just as good, if not better. And so I
yeah.
think there's element that oftentimes business owners are nervous about that, oh my gosh, my LinkedIn content has to be so polished, so professional, so corporate. Actually, you stand out when it's not. Some of my best
hmm
videos over there are like me walking through my house with like not a blazer on, like just regular clothes, just talking to people as people, right? And people respond to that and they appreciate that. Now, I do get the occasional DM, which usually signals to me that like you didn't feel like you could say that
Yeah,
in my comments because of where you work, right? That
that's
happens.
right.
I do think from an engagement standpoint, sometimes it's great to stand out in that way, to not be as polished and just to say, hey, whether I sell cookies or consulting, I need to be showing up on LinkedIn because there are people here that are buying.
That's exactly right. And as soon as you said that, I was immediately thinking of the story I've told too many times, which is when I started my first podcast. I had this office in Edge Hill Village, and we had a tin roof, and so when it rained, it was so
Mm.
freaking loud. And of course, I had podcasts scheduled, so I would take the cushions from the couch and I would build like a dome, and so I could get into like the studio setting. And so my point of telling you that is, at that time, and I do believe it was just like a couple of years where I spent a ridiculous amount of time, like way too much time and some cash, making sure that that edit was the most, like, I could sleep at night because that edit was so good. And then I'll be damned if like a year later it was like the barrier to entry was, I better hear a car in the background or some
Yep.
coffee cups. Like, I want to hear that it's in the reel. And to your point, that is very true. It's very true. While it might take more energy or relationships or money in some cases, it is easier to put out graphic output. That's easier. What's not easier is having a conversation that brings value that doesn't schlep your product, right? And so, to your point, finding the channels that work on there are absolutely vital. So, lastly, Miss Cole, tell me this: whether you're just starting out, well, you keep talking as long as you want, but give me some tactical advice to those that are gonna. You have a huge audience. People are gonna listen to this and go, "Okay, Brittany's been talking about career thrivers all this time. She's talking about some great stuff. Now she's talking about marketing and content. What is she saying? What are those little tidbits that maybe 2 or 3 people can take away and put into action, like that day they listen to the podcast and you're like, yes, they're going to have a nice foundation? What would that be?
Yeah, I would say think about your content like the episodes in a show. right? So from a few perspectives, one, I don't need to get everything in one episode, right? But two, people usually remember the overarching story of a show, not the minute by minute specifics of an episode.
Right.
So that second point hopefully releases people from, if you're wired like me, the over analyzing, maybe even having a little bit of, you know, being a recovering or relapsing, sometimes perfectionist, to say it does not have to be perfect for me to put it out. I don't have to have the best microphone and the best laptop and the best camera to start the
Right.
podcast. A
That's
phone,
right.
a $1,200 phone with a great mic and great camera. That's all I need to start this, right?
That's
And
exactly right.
because you need, if you are building an audience, right? There are three ways to build an audience. You can buy it, you can build it, or you can borrow it. And if you're building it organically, then it's going to take volume, right? Volume of content for you to build the audience. So get started is the bottom line, right? Get started, keep going. Know that the progress that you're looking for is in the practice of continuing. It's not in the
Yeah.
analysis paralysis. It's not in the let me read every blog and listen to every podcast of what I should be doing. It is in the action taking that you refine and you optimize. And then you'll look up and you're like, wow, I may not think this is good, but if I go back and look at the videos 3 oh, this is stellar, right? And it
That's
just comes
exactly right.
practice. So put your content out. That's what I'd say.
That's a great tip. And when I first started in radio, I learned about this term called flighting, and it was, in my mind. This is how I explained it to the prospects or clients. Anyway, it's exactly, like you would think of plane. They come in and they take off, and they come in and they take off, and they come in and they take off. But in this example, in my brain, they never land. And so, to the consumer, if you align that with a brand, massive companies I learned very early on are not even on, every 4 weeks. In some cases, they're not even on a full 2 weeks every month, but they know when to accelerate the plane into flight, the weight, and they know when to bring it back down and to take it up. And so to that point, do you have to be on all channels all the time? I don't really think that answer is yes, but you do 100% have to have consistency. Seth
Mhm.
Godin says it's 100% of what sticks out in all things marketing. I couldn't agree more after 21 years. It is the consistency is absolute key. Brittany Cole, you have been absolutely awesome. If you are not following Brittany, make sure to click one of the links below in however you're consuming this, where all the text is. That's where the links are going to be. Click on those links. Make sure that you are following her growing podcast, Let's Thrive Together, and newsletter. I signed up for that today. And no longer known as Style by Brit, even though I will refer to you in that in some engaging way in the future. She absolutely loves videos as far as content. And obviously, when it comes to audience building, she is building hers and not buying or borrowing. So, Brittany Cole, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for having me.